Alright, when it comes to animals humans seem to be obsessed with, perhaps there is just one famous primate that crosses everyone's minds. The Silverback Gorilla. Yeah. They're basically a unit of measurement at this point, am I right? Everyone wants to know just how much a gorilla can lift and how a human would stack up to them. And a lot of humans also seem to want to know how a gorilla would fare against, you know, something like big cats or bears. Oh, and speaking of bears, this whole bear versus gorilla debate has really blown up in the animal community. But since we all know gorillas would just straight up get mopped by a polar bear, a grizzly bear, and maybe even a black bear, this made me wonder, what about a panda? You know, these bears, the ones that fail at being a normal bear and are just straight up clumsy. And I don't mean to give shade or anything, you know, because they're still bears, right? They have sharp claws and teeth. But this made me wonder, who would actually win in a fight between a silverback gorilla and a giant panda? Would the gorilla's strength and ferocity perhaps be too much for the panda? Or could the panda's claws and jaws tear the gorilla a new one? Would they even put up a good fight? This is actually a pretty interesting matchup, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are fascinated by this very question, and honestly, the winner really might not be who you'd expect, so you gotta stick around to hear that. And really quick, before we begin, I just want to tell you all that there's a lot of work that goes into creating these videos, writing the scripts, doing the voiceovers, and editing, and it would really mean a lot to me if y'all subscribe to my channel, like this video, and commented what y'all think. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, and it's free to do so. Also, if we can manage to grow this channel to 100,000 subscribers by June of 2025, I will record a video of me doing tug of war against a tiger or any big cat that's available. Sounds fun? So let's achieve that. Anyways, before we actually get into who wins in a fight between a gorilla and a panda, we gotta get the setting right. Let's assume this is a brawl between an angry silverback gorilla and an angry panda who are both in their primes and want to fight it out. Yeah, so no running away. They will be fighting. And where shall this battle take place? Well, let's say this takes place in an open field, okay? So kinda neutral ground here, right? Okay, sounds good. Now let's find out who actually wins between a silverback gorilla and a panda. Size and physique. The silverback gorilla is the most iconic animal when it comes to strength. And it might not be the strongest animal out there, but surely when you think of powerful animals, gorillas usually make the top of the list. In fact, humans just kind of seem to have a deep fascination with them. You know, a lot of people want to know just how strong a silverback gorilla is. Well, even though we can't actually measure a gorilla's bench press or anything like that, silverbacks have been known to easily do pull-ups to an extreme version, which, given their mass, is an incredible feat, and have also been known to displace huge rocks with just one arm, lift heavy logs off the ground, and straight up tear down banana trees casually, which usually takes a trained professional fighter multiple kicks to do. So yeah, even though we don't know exactly how much they can lift, gorillas are insanely strong. But just how big is a silverback gorilla? Well, you see, it's not really a one-size-fits-all situation. It really depends on the location. For instance, the silverbacks you typically see in zoos, which are the western lowland gorillas, average about 310 pounds in the wild. Oh yeah, by the way, what's up with their scientific nickname? Gorilla, gorilla, gorilla? They really went all in for that one, am I right? Anyways, when you think of those truly massive gorillas that radiate this certain boss aura, you're probably thinking about the eastern gorillas, with the mountain and eastern lowland silverbacks typically weighing in around the 400-pound range, with some truly exceptional males reaching up to 430 pounds. Yeah, our primate relatives are absolutely huge, but how does it stack up to its opponents? The giant panda. Yeah, these bears are perhaps among the laziest out there, but remember, they too are still bears, okay? And are quite powerful when they're pushed to their actual limits. Now, interestingly, there isn't a whole lot of strength feats for giant pandas out there, but when it comes to anti-feats, oh, they got plenty. You know, they're just clumsy and whatnot. Thus, we actually need to rely on anatomy here to help us out. And guess what? Their morphology indicates that although they are pretty fat and perhaps not the most agile, they share actually similar strength to that of a black bear. And just like other bears, they have very thick fur and lots of fat, and probably emphasis on the fat part because come on, look at it. But okay, we get it. Pandas are actually quite durable. Oh yeah, and kinda a side note here, did y'all know that pandas are actually decent swimmers? Yeah, surprised me too, but I digress. So just how big is a giant panda? Well, the name giant might be wrongly placed here. The average average adult male panda weighs in anywhere between 250 to 300 pounds on a good day, and some exceptionally large individuals have been known to achieve 350 pounds, but I mean, they're kind of just maxing out at that size right there. So, as you can see, the silverback gorilla is actually a bit larger than the giant panda, with there being nearly 100 to 100 pound weight difference for eastern silverbacks. Yeah, that surprised me too, but here's the thing. There's actually an advantage the panda has here in terms of durability, which is his thick fur and fattier build. To put simply, one may consider them actually more durable. Now let me explain. So fur is actually a big advantage when it comes to defense. It bunches up with an applied force, and that actually mitigates a lot of damage. You know, if they get bit or whatever, it kind of just clumps up, and pandas having a lot of fat on them would actually help with that as well. It's gonna be looser fitting around the muscle. Now if we take a look at the gorilla, for example, they have very similar flesh to ours, right? Anthropoid skin, if you will. Now what that means is that the gorilla skin is actually tightly wrapped around its muscles, just like humans, and thus, their flesh is actually pretty rippable. I mean, there's not really much of a barrier going on between the skin and the muscle, and furthermore, if sharp objects actually hit the skin, for example claws, it would tear through the flesh rather easily and cause bleeding damage to occur. Now there's one way to kind of mitigate the disparity between fur and skin here, and that is just being so insanely big that you are just simply outdoing your opponent with sheer mass. Now does a gorilla have that? I don't know, that might be something to think about. A silverback gorilla would have a pretty big size difference, especially when concerning the eastern silverbacks. So that is something to consider, but remember, the gorilla skin being a problem would be if the panda could actually get a critical hit in. Could the panda even do so? Furthermore, how do both of these creatures fight, and how would a brawl even play out between the two of them? Well, this actually brings me on to my last point, which is weaponry and fighting IQ. When it comes to both the panda and gorilla fighting, this is where things get interesting. So, first things first, what are their weapons looking like? Well, the silverback is of course famous for its brutish long arms that are insanely powerful. In fact, when it comes to the whole reach aspect in the fight, it really is no contest. The gorilla has a lot longer arms compared to the panda here, and they also have hands, which in turn allows them to actually grab stuff and manipulate things better than, let's just say, I don't know, a paw for example. So this does actually have some pros. You know, the gorilla would likely have an easier time grabbing onto and manipulating the bear rather than vice versa. And it could potentially grab onto a limb and whatnot, right? Now yes, gorillas do have pretty powerful bites, but here's the thing to note. Their dentistry is actually built for an herbivorous diet, and thus, their canines are kind of fragile and are mainly used for display compared to something like a lion, for example. This is further proven by their skull anatomy. You see, a gorilla's mouth, just like ours, is pressed right up against their face, meaning that they have to get insanely close in order to bite. And even then, their bites are more or less just kind of used to sort of injure and distract, rather than for killing purposes. So, they might not be killing the panda with its bite, but I mean, it would still hurt. And speaking of biting, pandas too have really powerful jaws and better dentistry for actually sinking into muscle and causing crippling damage. Now, this is further proven by their elongated snout. You know, it kind of just protrudes out from its face, but it ain't really that big compared to other bears, likely because of its adaptation to a more herbivorous diet. If a panda manages to bite a gorilla, it would be very painful and more lethal compared to the other way around. And another thing pandas do have over the gorilla, which is a big advantage here, is its claws. Yes, remember, giant pandas are still bears, and they have sharp claws that can actually cut through flesh rather easily. And given that the gorilla has anthropoid skin that is tightly wrapped around its muscles and prone to bleeding, as we discussed earlier, their claws would be rather lethal to the gorilla. But weapons are only as good as the wielder, right? So how do these animals actually fight? Well, you see, gorillas are very brutish in nature and love to grapple. In fact, that's kind of their preferred way of fighting, you know? When silverbacks typically fight each other, they love to swing their weighty arms around and wrestle with each other. And here's the thing, okay? They also like to club with their arms as well, charge at their opponents, and just like to kind of slam and just manipulate whatever they can grab, right? And when they get in range, they do actually bite. Now here's the thing, like I said, their bites are not used for really killing purposes, but rather just to injure. But okay, we get it. Gorillas are a bit of a wrestling freak, and they also do have more dexterous arms than the bear, and it comes to really no surprise. So gorillas can actually do more precise movements with their arms, and this would allow them to have great control and manipulation in a fight against the panda. And once the gorilla kind of wrestles down an animal, they like to kind of crush and overall just fracture whatever limb they can grab, right? And this is seen when they fight other gorillas, but also when leopards confront silverbacks. Now I've went over multiple times on this channel that leopards do not actually hunt silverbacks, but rather juvenile and female gorillas, but we're not going to get into all of that. If you want to see more about it, made a video on it, but yeah, I digress. Anyways, when seeing necropsy analysis of dead or very injured leopards, there are prominent fractures around the neck vertebrae region on leopards, and their limbs are quite battered and show bite wounds from the gorilla. Now, even though leopards and pandas are different, it still gives us information on how a gorilla would kind of deal with a panda here, right? Might go for the neck and try to, I don't know, break its neck vertebrae or something, or go for the limbs, dislocate it or fracture it, or something to that degree. Oh yeah, also, one thing to take note of, the gorilla is going to be more dynamically moving in the fight. They like to leap and lunge at their opponents, they move around pretty well for their size, and they would just experience an overall more three-dimensional way of fighting compared to the panda, right? Now, on the other hand, pandas. Now, pandas might not know kung fu or anything, but they can still fight, perhaps not easily though. You see, the giant panda fights like a lazy, fat bear, and I mean, that's just kind of what they are. They particularly like to lunge and grab a hold of their rivals, and I guess just bite them from there. Now, when you see how they attack humans, for example, you can see they just kind of go for the legs since that's what they can grab, and given their shorter stature and heavier body layout, you can kind of see why that is. And this is actually different than how a lot of bears like to fight. For example, grizzlies like to stand up and wrestle. And I mean, if you actually see how pandas fight, they are not that dynamically moving. Again, due to their anatomy. Their grappling ain't the best, but I mean, it's still there. They can still grab a hold of their opponents and push them around and bite them. Additionally, they also have been known to claw and scratch at their opponents. Now, if you actually see how pandas swing their arms, they kind of just use one arm and are pretty sluggish when doing so. But remember, they still have sharp claws, which can tear through the skin pretty easily. And this could be one way the panda has an advantage. The panda's claws, if successful in grappling onto the gorilla, would tear through the flesh of the silverback somewhat easily, you know, and thus cause bleeding damage to occur, which I mean, I don't really see a way the gorilla could cause the panda to bleed excessively. So could the panda's sharp claws, more effective bite, and sheer durability win it the fight? Or would the gorilla's just overall strength, agility, and intelligence make it walk out the winner? Well, people, I think it's about time we determine a verdict. Alright, we have our stats. So, who wins in a fight between a silverback gorilla and a giant panda? Well, people, given all the data presented, I think the silverback gorilla would win with high difficulty. What? A gorilla can actually beat a bear? Well, perhaps the panda. Now let me explain. Although this was definitely not an easy to determine verdict, I just thought the gorilla would have the upper hand in a head-to-head fight. So as we discussed, pandas are actually pretty clumsy, and when they fight, they don't do a whole lot of moving around and just like to grab at the body or legs. Now, the gorilla would simply just be more mobile and wild in the fight. It would just be tossing around the panda, and it would be moving around a lot, so the panda couldn't really easily secure a good grip. And even if it did, I'm sure the large size gap and obvious strength advantage in the gorilla's arms would be enough to push it away. Now, I don't know who has more stamina, but the gorilla I just see muscling through the panda and dislocating / breaking a limb of the bear. Now from there, it's pretty much game over. The gorilla could also try targeting the neck / skull region and try to break the vertebrae, which they've been noted to do in the wild when confronted by leopards. However, it likely wouldn't be an easy task for the gorilla, given, you know, the thick fur and massive fat of the panda, and the silverback's intelligence would likely find that out pretty fast. So it would just kind of redirect its attacks to the limbs, which gorillas have been famously known to attack. Its bite would also be pretty painful as well. Now, it wouldn't really outright kill the panda, but it wouldn't be pleasant for the bear to experience either. So yeah, anyways, I just think the gorilla's overall more mobile nature, its bigger size advantage, its more dexterous / stronger arms, and its intelligence would give it the win more often than not. And hey, thank you so much for stopping by. Feel free to check out the rest of my content, and have a nice day.